Hi friends, Allie here. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how to crochet this checkered heart blanket. This blanket features 20 crochet squares with contrasting heart shapes. I've used 4 colors, but feel free to use as many colors and color combinations as you'd like. This blanket measures approximately 40 inches by 50 inches, with each square being about 10 inches by 10 inches. You can adjust the size of the blanket by using less squares or adding more. In this video, I will show you how to crochet a square, how to join them all together, and how to add a border. If you want the free written instructions and graph for this pattern, you can find it on my blog, theturtletrunk.com, or you can find the ad-free printable PDF from my Etsy and Ravelry shops. I'll leave links to those in the description box. Now, if you're ready to get started, let's head over to our supply list and let's get making. For this project, you will need medium 4-weight yarn in 4 colors, or however many colors you'd like to use. I'll be using Lion Brand Yarn Color Theory. You'll also need a 5mm or H crochet hook, yarn needle, and scissors. On the left, you'll see the layout I used for my blanket. I made a total of 20 squares using 4 different color combinations. You can make your blanket exactly like this, or feel free to try different layouts or color combinations. On the next slide, I'll provide a few other layout options, but you can do whatever you'd like. In my blog post for this pattern, as well as the PDF pattern, I include a coloring sheet that you can print off so you can play around with different layouts and colors, so be sure to check that out if you're not sure how you want your blanket to look yet. In the center, you'll see the yardage needed for this blanket. I use color D to join all my squares. That's why the yardage is higher for that one color. For my border, I did a total of 4 rounds of single crochets, 1 in each of the 4 colors, but you can add any border that you'd like, or you don't even have to add a border at all. On the bottom, I've also included the yardage for 1 square in case you're planning on making more or less squares. You can figure out exactly how much yarn you'll need. Here's a few other ways you can lay out your squares. The possibilities are endless, so play around with them to find what you like best. For this pattern, I've included full written instructions and a graph like this. You can follow along with one or both of them. Each square represents 1 half double crochet, and some people, like me, find it easier to follow along with this rather than the written instructions, but use whatever you prefer. So now let's grab our yarn and our hook and let's get making. So we need to make a total of 20 squares. I will show you how to make one, and then we will meet back up and I'll show you how to join them together. I won't be going through this whole square row for row because that would take a very long time, but I will show you how to get started, how to make the color changes, and then I'll put written instructions up on the screen for you to finish. So starting off with your background color, begin with a slip knot on your hook. We will be using a foundation half double crochet row for our first row. This is working your foundation chain and your first row of half double crochets together in one. But you can work a regular foundation chain if you'd like. To make a foundation half double crochet row, chain 2, then yarn over and insert your hook into the second chain from the hook. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over, pull through the first loop on your hook. This will create the first foundation chain. You'll want to remember where this is because we'll be working back into it for our second stitch. So remember where that is. Feel free to use a stitch marker if you need. Next, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And there we made our half double crochet. So there we have our first foundation half double crochet. Now let's do it again. Yarn over and insert your hook into the last foundation chain we worked, making sure you're working into both loops on the bottom there. Then yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through the first loop on your hook. This is our second foundation chain. Again, remember where this is for our next stitch. Next, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook, and there we made our next half double crochet. So we're going to repeat this for a total of 33 stitches. I'll show you once more how to do it. Yarn over and insert your hook into the last foundation chain we worked, again making sure to work through both loops. then yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first loop on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Continue this for a total of 33 stitches. I've reached the end of row 1 and I have a total of 33 stitches, and our stitch count will be 33 for all of the remaining rows. Now chain 1 and turn. The chain 1 at the beginning of the row does not count as a stitch. You'll see that the written instructions are now simplified and it will look like this the rest of the pattern. We will only be using the half double crochet stitch, and the abbreviations will tell you which color to use and how many stitches for that color. BC stands for background color and HC is for the heart color. At the end of each row, chain 1 and turn. So starting into the first stitch, we are going to work our first half double crochet. To half double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Repeat this across for a total of 33 stitches, and repeat this row 2 more times. I'll catch back up with you at the end of row 4. I just finished row 4 and I've chained 1 and turned. Now onto row 5. This row we will be adding in our heart color, as you can see on our graph. So we are going to work 16 half double crochets across using our background color. And on the 16th stitch, we'll change to our heart color, work 1 stitch, then change back to our background color for another 16 stitches. So I'm going to work 15 half double crochets across, and then I'll show you how to change color on that 16th stitch. I just finished the 15th stitch, so we're going to start the 16th stitch as normal. Yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, but here is where it will change color. So drop your current color, then grab your heart color, and we're going to do our final pull through with the heart color so that we're ready to use it for the next stitch. We are currently working on the right side of our square, so make sure all of your tail ends are on the back side or the wrong side. Pull through with the heart color. Now we're ready to work our next stitch with the heart color. Since we are only working 1 stitch before the next color change, we are going to do the same thing as the last stitch, where we started as normal, then do the final pull through with the background color. So start your next half double crochet, and while I'm working the heart color, I'll be carrying the background color across the back and through the stitches for the heart. I'm going to do this for the whole square, so I'm not having to use extra bobbins or cut and reattach new yarn. If you'd prefer to use multiple bobbins or cut and reattach your yarn, you absolutely can. This method I'm using will cause some of the yarn being carried through to be seen through the heart, so if you don't want that, then I would use multiple bobbins. So for the final pull through, drop the heart color and pull through with the background color. Then we will work 16 half double crochets across with our background color and leaving our heart color strand behind. At the end of row 5, chain 1 and turn. Now onto row 6. We'll half double crochet 15 across and change colors on the 15th stitch. So I'll continue across and catch up with you on that 15th stitch. On the 15th stitch, we'll start the half double crochet as normal, but complete the final pull through with our heart color. Now that we're working on the wrong side of our square, be sure to leave all your loose ends on this side. So pick up the heart color strand and pull it through those 3 loops on your hook. And then we'll work 3 half double crochets across, changing a color again on the last stitch. Again, I'll be working around the background color strand to bring it across for the next time we need it. On the third stitch, we'll change back to our background color. Again, making sure to drop your loose end towards us so it's on the wrong side. Change to the background color, and then we'll work 15 half double crochets across with the background color. At the end of row 6, chain 1 and turn. Now for rows 7 to 25, I'm just going to put the written instructions up on the screen. If you want to finish the square following the graph, you can find it on my blog or the PDF pattern. But just continue the rest of the rows like we did for rows 5 and 6, and I will catch back up with you at the end of row 25. I'm at the end of row 25. Your square should look something like this. Now I'm going to chain 1 and cut off my yarn, leaving a long enough tail end to weave in. Then you can weave in all your ends, then make the rest of your squares. When you're done all your squares, come back here and I'll show you how to join them all together. Once all your squares are done, we can join them together. You'll need a yarn needle and some yarn. I'll be using this ivory color, but you can use whatever color you'd like. The join we'll be using is almost invisible, so it doesn't really matter which color you use. I'm going to start with this top left square and join the one below it first, then the one to the right next. For each join, you'll need about 2 to 3 times the length of yarn. You can cut your yarn longer and continue that strand for the next join so that you don't have as many ends to weave in, but keep in mind if your strand is too long, it may be hard to manage and it could tangle and be annoying. So try out different lengths and see what works best for you. So grab the first 2 squares and line them up with the right sides facing up. We're going to start on the outside edge. I'm going to turn these so that I'm working up. And we're going to use a mattress stitch to join. Feel free to use any other joining method. I chose the mattress stitch because it is nearly invisible, which I wanted for my blanket, but you can use any other joining method that you'd like. For the mattress stitch, we will be working back and forth between the 2 squares. Be sure to work in the corresponding stitch on each side to ensure your squares line up evenly. You can use stitch markers if you'd like. Start by inserting your needle through the first stitch on the left square, working from the bottom of the stitch up through the top. Pull the yarn through, leaving about a 2-inch long tail. Then repeat the same thing on the right square. Insert your needle through the bottom of the first stitch and up through to the top. Next, insert your needle back through the first stitch on the left square, but this time we will go from the top of the stitch down to the bottom. Then bring your needle up through the next stitch. Repeat on the right square. Insert your needle through the first stitch, working from the top down, then bring your needle up through the next stitch. Repeat this all the way across. Insert your needle into the last stitch you worked into the left square, working from the top down. Then bring your needle back up through the next stitch. Then insert your needle into the last stitch you worked into the right square, working from the top down. Then bring your needle back up through the next stitch. And again, insert your needle into the last stitch you worked on the left square, working from the top down. Then bring your needle back up through the next stitch. Then insert your needle into the last stitch you worked on the right square, working from the top down. Then bring your needle back up through the next stitch. Now, every few inches, you'll want to stop and tighten this yarn strand to close the gap. To do so, grab both ends of the yarn strand and pull tight. And you'll see the seam disappear. Be sure to do this every inch or so. If you let the seam get too long before tightening it, it could cause loose spots in the join and you'll be left with some loops poking out. So continue working the mattress stitch across, making sure to tighten it every inch or so, and then I'll catch back up with you at the end of the squares. I've just finished this join. I have leftover yarn here, so I'm going to just leave it and use it for the next square in this line. So you can see the front is really nice and flat and you can't see the join at all. Then the back does have a ridge, but you can't see the yarn from the join almost at all, so I think it looks really nice. Now let's join our next square. We're going to add the second square on the top. We are going to be doing the same join, but I wanted to show you because when joining the sides of the squares, we'll be working into the sides of the stitches instead of the tops of the stitches. So it's a little trickier to see where to work, but I'll show you. So grab your next square and cut another strand of yarn and your needle. Line up the squares so that the right sides are facing up. And I'm actually going to turn these so that the top of the squares are facing me so that I'm working down my blanket towards the bottom. If I have any leftover yarn from this join, I want it on the bottom so I can use it for the next squares. So again, we're doing the same join, but instead of working through the top and bottom of the stitches, we'll be working through the sides. And we'll want to work again through the corresponding stitches on each square, so working through the same rows on either side. Since we used a half double crochet stitch, it creates a ridge across the squares, so it's quite easy to line up the rows. So we'll start by working through the side of the first row on the left square, making sure you're grabbing 2 loops on the side of the stitch. Insert your needle through the bottom of the stitch to the top, then repeat on the right side, working through the side of the first row, inserting your needle up through the bottom to the top. Then going back through the first row on the left square, inserting your needle through the top of the stitch, then bringing it back up through the next stitch. This will be the edge of row 2. Then repeat on the right. Insert your hook into the first stitch, working through the top to the bottom. Then bring your needle back up through the next stitch, which will be row 2. Then we'll repeat this across. Since we're working on the sides of the rows, you'll either be working through the side of a half double crochet or the chain 1 from the beginning of the row. So some stitches may be easier to work through than others, but take your time and just make sure you're working into the corresponding stitch on either side so that your squares line up evenly. After you've worked an inch or so, don't forget to pull the ends of the yarn tight to close the gap. Then continue the rest of the way up of the squares. I'm at the end of this join, and again I have leftover yarn, so I'll leave it attached and use it for the next join. So I'll add in the third square now, which will be beside or in between the 2 we've just added. And we can use both the leftover strands to join with. If you don't have any leftover yarn, you can add in a new strand. And you can do whatever join you'd like first, and then just continue working the mattress stitch and adding the next squares. It doesn't matter what order you add them in. I joined the top 2 rows together first, then added the next row. And so I'm going to use the first leftover strand and continue it across the blanket horizontally, and I'll use the other strand when I go to join this square down vertically. When you're adding in a new square, you can start the mattress stitch from the beginning by working through the bottom of the first stitch and up through to the top, then over to the other side. Or you can also just continue working the mattress stitch where you left off on the last square. So working into the last stitch of the last square, then onto the new square. I did both ways on different squares and they both look the same, so you can do whichever method you prefer. So I'm going to continue joining all these squares, and I'll catch back up with you when they're all together. And here I have all of my squares joined together. Sorry, it's really hard to show it under my camera here, but after all of your squares are joined, you can weave in all of the loose ends on the back, and then we will move on to adding a border around our blanket. So you can add any type of border you would like. You can even leave the blanket without a border if you prefer. There's so many different border stitches you can use, so choose your favorite. I'm just going to add a simple border of just single crochets around, but I'm going to do a total of 4 rounds of single crochets, each round using one of the 4 colors of my blanket. So I'm going to start with the color ivory, then use bee pollen for round 2, then bone, then canyon. So attach your yarn to one of the corners of your blanket. Then we're going to work 3 single crochets into the corner. I'm going to work around my tail end too, so I don't have to weave it in later. So to single crochet, insert your hook into that corner stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook. So work a total of 3 single crochets all into the corner, and this is going to help us round out our corner. Then working down the side of the blanket, work 1 single crochet into the side of each row down. And then we're just going to continue this around our blanket. So working 3 single crochets into each corner and 1 single crochet into each stitch across the bottom, side, and top. So continue on and I'll catch back up with you at the end of the round. On the last stitch of the round, I'm going to change to my next color, then continue the same pattern for another round. So I'm just going to work straight into that next stitch. You can also cut off the first color now. So we're just going to continue doing what we did for the first round. So work 1 single crochet into each stitch around and 3 single crochets into each corner stitch. So work 1 single crochet into that first stitch, then we're into our corner stitch. So we'll work 3 single crochets into that corner stitch. Then down the side of our blanket, we'll work 1 single crochet into each stitch down until we reach our next corner, then 3 single crochets into the next corner, and we're just going to continue that around, and then do the same thing when we get back to the beginning, change to our next color on the last stitch, do the same thing with the next color, and then do 1 more round for a total of 4 rounds. So here is my border after 4 rounds. I think it looks really nice with this blanket. It's simple but pulls it all together. So now you can weave in all of the ends from the border and then we are all done our blanket. So here is my checkered heart blanket with all of the ends woven in. I am so happy with how it turned out. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this pattern. Don't forget you can find this free written pattern and many more free patterns on my blog, theturtletrunk.com. Thanks again for watching and I'll see you next time.